Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing our tournament tutorial series, and it's time to do the Silk tournament. So as usual, you will find a link in the description where you can see my post on my website where I describe general overview of what I'm doing here, losses, more detailed data numbers, as well as you can check the first episode in this series, which is a marble tournament, where I speak a little bit more about what we're doing here. But for this episode, let me just very quickly reiterate that we are fighting 5-star, all 5 stages in the tournament up to Province 24. And for this video, and for every video in this series, we are only doing 5-star provinces. So as you can see, I have done already up to 4 stars. And yeah, so in terms of what we have of the city setup, again, it's chapter 17 and game for the time being. Elf city, no shortages on any troop types. And what do we have? We have all damage boosting ancient wonders, levels from 11 to 16, so about 20 to 25% extra damage boost for individual unit types. There's also maxed out as in level 17, level 30 Martial Monastery, so that's another 30% health boost for all unit types, so those are permanent boosts. In terms of temporary ones, I have Fire Phoenix Evolution level 10, which is fed, so that means extra 50% damage boost to all unit types. And temporary buildings, what I have out there is 1 enhanced light range, so extra 50% damage boost to light range units, as well as 50% extra damage for my mage units, because I have 1 magnificent mage multiplier. And for the temporary boost to health, I have actually Dwarven Armorer, 1 unit, which adds also extra 50% of health to all unit types. So pretty substantial boosts again, and we are gonna use them. As you will see, hopefully later on, this tournament is actually relatively sensitive to the boosts that you have out there, to the degree that depending on what boosts you have put out there, you may be using different unit types, because yeah, they could be better or worse depending on the boosts. But with that, let's jump right in and start with province number 1. I mean, again, remember, it's 5-star provinces already. So let's see what we have here. Okay, fairly usual setup here. So what we would see a lot in this tournament is heavy range units as well as light melee. Unfortunately, we'll also see, unfortunately we'll see some heavy melee, which is genuinely not a problem. We'll also see some mages, which, depending on what they're mixed with, might be ruining our day in a way. But okay, let's see. So in the beginning we do have, okay, we can go heavy range here. We can go heavy melee. So there are some unit combinations for enemy troops that sort of make us want to use heavy melee against them, and in some cases good option. But yeah, melee has its penalty, so let's see what else can we do. Okay, we can go mages, that's not a bad option necessarily. Light range, not amazing, yeah. Okay, so here, let's see how we can analyze that. So if we go heavy range, so we have 2 light melee unit types, which will do alright against. We have 1 heavy range, which will do okay against, and okay, what do we have for counter units? Heavy melee is not a problem usually against heavy ranged, certainly not earlier on, but the mages can be a problem. One mage is usually not that big of a deal, unless it's heavy range specialist, which this one is not. So heavy range is an option, and we can even consider going Frog Princess here, because they're really good against light melee. But in this case, I'm actually tempted to go mages. Those two heavy units what we are facing would be, well, we're going to be really good against. One mage we're going to be really good against. And then two counter units, we have light melee, which is not a mage specialist, and we have another light melee, which is also not a mage specialist. So you know that I'm going to go with the Blossom Princess. And yeah, earlier on it doesn't really matter that much, but I'll do the same if we have something like later on. Okay, yeah, as you can see, that's kind of like there's a lot of awkward matchups in this tournament, where none of the unit types seems to be like an obvious choice. So again, let's see again, we have three light units that again our heavy range would be really good against. Actually, I think it's basically the same matchup as the last time around. Let's see, we have heavy melee and we have a Thorn Rose Mage. Yeah, I think that's basically the same matchup. No, not quite the same. So yeah, here I wouldn't be going mages, so there's really nothing going for mages here. And we also have Mage Specialist against us, so no. We can go light range. None of these are light range specialists, so that's not a bad option. But you know that earlier on we'll just go Frog Princess. We'll do okay. Well, we'll do more than okay. And here lies the problem, so let me quickly talk about that. So Frog Princess are amazing against light melee. So let's just see here. Plus 90% damage boost, 70% damage reduction from them, and obviously they have massive range advantage. So that's, if you have a lot of light melee and not much else against you, then Frog Prince are amazing. Now, in this case, we don't have just that. So we have also heavy melee unit against us, which heavy melee mixed into with light melee, not a problem for Frog Princess usually. Because by the time heavy melee gets to them, usually that's kind of, it's over. But we also happen to have mages here, which this one likely not a heavy range specialist, but regardless. Frog Princes do not do well against mages, not at all. So they may be able to handle one. When you have two in the stack against you, that's usually bad news. Also, another thing is, Frog Princess tend to be squishy, so that's where it gets to the point where, depending how much health boost do you have out there, they may be either amazing option, and you might be getting relatively far into the tournament and seeing something like that, and because of their range, they don't have really any losses to speak of. But once they start to get, like their opponent starts to get close to them and start taking pot shots at them, depending how much boosts you have for health, they just start to fold and melt down. So here that's not the case yet, so we are good. So just keep that in mind. Frog Princess may be amazing, or they may actually outright lose you the matchup. Okay, again, another one looks good for, well, looks okay for heavy melee, but most of them are heavy melee versus heavy melee, so not great. So here we will go either mages, which again, for heavies would be great, but we have one unit that is actually mage specialist, so actually here we'll just go light range, which is Poison Dryad, which is excellent again against heavy melee, being ranged and plus 90 minus 80. And it will do actually much better against the Hellhounds than our mages will do. So there we go. And again, earlier on, that choice is not as important as later on. Okay, again, another case of, we have a couple of options here. So you can go heavy melee, and again, that looks actually pretty decent setup for them. Only two other heavy melee and 3 heavy range, light melee that they are good against, and by that I don't mean Trent. I'll probably go Valorians if I ever have to go heavy melee here. But also, we'll actually just go Frog Princess because, again, they're amazing against light melee, but the 2 other counter units happen to be heavy melee again, and because of the melee versus range advantage, Frogs actually will do quite alright against them. Well, in this case, they'll do more than alright. We'll have literally no losses. And remember, that's a 5-star provinces, even though relatively early on. Okay. Okay, again, like this one is kind of an easy choice. So that's the 4 units that heavy range is going to be really good against, and 1, which is counter unit, which is actually heavy range specialist, but it's a melee unit, so it needs to get close to us in order to do damage. Be careful with these specific heavy melee units, knights. Later on, when they get to 3 stars, and they will get a lot of enemy squad size versus yours, because if they close in on your golems or frog princes, even though they may just have 1 or 2, they may inflict severe damage actually. But we're not quite there yet, so far so good. Let's see. Okay, okay, so this one is an easy choice again. We'll go light range here, and we'll go poison dryads again because we have mostly heavy melee here. So they would do quite alright against mages, even though they're not specialists. They do quite alright against other light range. And the only counter unit here, Hellhound, is not a light range specialist. So poison dryad we go, and we have the boosts for that. So, but yeah, we're already starting still to take some damage. I mean, that's kind of unavoidable at that stage. Alright, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so here... yeah, I think that's actually, again, one of the matchups what we saw earlier on. So again, a couple of options here. You go with one of the heavy units. You either go heavy range, and... this one will be okay, but then we have a mage, which is not a heavy range specialist, so you know that at that stage, relatively early on, I'll still go Frog Prince rather than the heavy melee. As you can see, we did take a little bit of damage, but definitely more than acceptable. Okay. Yeah, that's... Is it the same again? I think that's the same again. So let's see, counter units, not heavy range specialist. Okay, no, that's different. So this one is actually a heavy range specialist. So if I go here, this one is not heavy melee specialist, but this one is. So light range specialist against heavy melee. Not great. How about this one? If we go mages, we have a mage specialist against us. And... okay, you know that in this case I would actually like to go with poison dryads again. The reason being, again, the poison dryads will do very well against heavy melee. They would do quite alright against light melee. Sorry. Against mages, they would do okay against other light range. And 2 counter units what we have here, Hellhounds are not light range specialists, and the heavy range is also not light range specialists, and we'll have some range here with our light range units. So, but as you can see, that's not exactly lossless. I mean, not what we would expect that necessarily, so that was quite alright. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, again, that's the easy one. No counter units for our light range, and only 1 other light range, so poison dryads it is. So 3 heavy melee here. That should do quite well. Yep, that worked well. And province number 10. Okay, so that's the easy call here again. By the looks of that, heavy melee would be better, because again, 4 light melee that they're going to be good against, and one they're comparable, heavy melee versus heavy melee, but Frog Princes are so much better against light melee, and they have massive range, and the only counter unit of sorts is not a specialist, and it's a heavy melee, which is very, very slow, so we should be doing really well here. Yeah, as you can see, we did take some damage, but yeah, that's pretty much lossless. Okay, but what that means now, Province 11, that now we're starting to face 3-star units, which would make quite a noticeable difference. Okay, so here again, one of the two heavy units that we'll have to go with. So let's see what this heavy is specializing against. Yeah, okay, so here we have a mage unit, which is a heavy range specialist. And as you can see, they would have 80% attack damage and 70% damage reduction. While against heavy melee, they are 40 and 40. But that's a melee, so... So basically here the choice is between Frog Princes. I mean, or you can consider the Golems, but usually that's not the best combination here. So it's either Frog Princes or our Valorian Guards, or actually they renamed them to Veteran Guards. So let's see, against heavy ranged, not a whole lot of boosts against the heavy melee for them. So you know that, let's go with the Frog Prince and let's see how it goes. Okay, so again, like relatively early on, we didn't take too much damage, but that might be a relatively sketchy matchup in Provinces 20+. You can easily have 50% and more losses on your Frog Princes. That's just how this matchup works. Okay, alright, again, the heavy melee is an option. Here we have counter unit against mages. Okay, no unit light range specialist, not really light range specialist, 2 melees. So okay, so here again we have two options, different ones. So we either go with the heavy melee, which is not exactly amazing here, or we can go, but doesn't have counter units technically speaking, or we can go with Poison Dreads, who technically have two counter units, but they're both melee and not exactly light range specialists, and other ones we're going to do really well against. So okay, as you can see, that worked pretty well. Okay, so we're halfway there. Let's see, okay. Yeah, another one of these awkward ones. Okay, let's see, the counter unit is not specializing against heavy melee. Okay, so that's good. So heavy melee is an option here. We have one comparable, one sort of, well, good against, and two good against. Heavy range is a possibility, just as we said before, but here our mage, what we are facing, is actually heavy range specialist, so I'm not exactly keen on doing that. Mage is an option, but we have one counter unit against mages, so you know that, let's see how our Valorian Guards, well, Veteran Guards are gonna do. Okay, actually again, that's matchup that we did actually better than I expected. And again, when you're going melee, and especially if there's a lot of melee on the opponent's side, a lot would depend on the terrain. It may help, it may hurt. So in this case, that went definitely better than I expected. Okay, so again, this one is a relatively no-brainer. No counter units to the heavy range. So which one would we go through? Well, we have three light melee, so we'll still go Frog Prince, but Golems would still do quite alright here. Yeah, and as you can see, even though it looked pretty good, Frog Prince is starting to take some damage even in the relatively favorite matchups for them. Okay, so what do we have here? Heavy melee is a possibility. Not amazing one. Let's see what we have for the mages. So mages, we can go mage versus mage, 2 heavies, and not really a mage specialist, but not terrible, and mage specialist. So or we can go a light range, and I think that's what we're gonna go with, because we have 2 heavy melees that they're gonna do really well against. I think I did show that, right? Yeah, they have plus 90, minus 80. They do quite alright against mages, and they have another damage reduction almost by half, so that's good. And the 2 sort of counter units, I think, are both light melees against our range, and neither one of them are specializing against light range, so let's do that. Yep, that worked pretty well. Okay. Okay, again, we have several options here. This is not a bad matchup. So heavy melee again is a possibility, not an amazing one, but there are no counter units here, so that's good. We can go mages as in Blossom Princesses, but let's see what we have for counter units here. So we're gonna have light melee, who is not a mage specialist, and another light melee, which is kinda neither here nor there, but not a mage specialist. But if we go light range, then we have actually one light melee who happen to be a light range specialist. And later on, even though these are melee versus range, they actually are gonna hurt you, like these ancient orcs, brutal ancient orcs, especially if you have a couple of them and you go with light range, they're gonna inflict some damage. So here I would actually go with our mages. Even though again, like the melee is a possibility, not an amazing one, and it would be heavily dependent on the terrain. So let's see how our mages... Okay, well, that's probably again the terrain thing. I did not expect to have no losses here whatsoever. That's unusual. But hey, I don't mind. I'm gonna take that. So far, we did 2/3. I think we're running way fewer losses than I would expect at that stage. Which may mean only one thing, like in the remaining one, and remember, these are much bigger encounters, we're gonna have some issues here. Okay, so melee here is not a bad option. Mage is an option. Heavy range is sort of an option. So again, that's one of the weird ones. So heavy ranged can do okay here, but again, there are 2 other heavy ranges. And we have a mage, even though that's not specializing in heavy range. So maybe definitely wouldn't go Frog Princess here because of the mage and 2 other heavy range. That's not going to be a good matchup for them. Our Veteran Guard is going to do really well against these 4 units, but then the only mage here happened to be heavy melee specialist, and that's just not great. What if we go mages? So mages are going to do well against... Well, going to do okay against mages, going to do okay against heavier range, especially if we go banshees. They're gonna do okay against ancient orcs. These are not mage specialists, but hellhounds happen to be mage specialists and pretty good ones, so you know that I'll probably have to go golems here, and I would expect heavy loss. We can actually may lose here even. Well, we were lucky again. Like the losses are pretty heavy, so again we're probably closer to 50% or so. But that's better than I expected. Probably because we're still not quite in the 20s category. But yeah, this one was a sketchy matchup for sure. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, so again, that's a relatively easy one, either light range or heavy. Or mage is gonna do, like Blossom Princess is gonna do well here. I'll probably go rangers here. The reason being, even though dryads are definitely better against heavy melee, out between the heavy melee and mage units here, mages are by far much more dangerous. So, and rangers are amazing against mages, and they'll take care easily of the remaining heavy melees, even though they're not as good against them. Okay. So 19. Okay, again, now that's a relatively no-brainer. Mages have no counter units here for the, and then the counter unit for our light range is a light range specialist and happen to be a range unit as well. So yeah, no-brainer here. We go with Blossom Princesses. And that worked pretty well. Did like 10% losses, but again, at 5-star, Province 19, that's a pretty good deal. I'd take that. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, here probably a heavy range matchup, because like these three light units we're gonna do well against, and two counter units happen to be heavy melee. And on top of that, they happen to be not exactly heavy range specialists, so probably Golem. Yeah, I think Golem, because they will need to be able to take some punishment from heavy melee guys. I don't think they would be able to shoot them. Yeah, and you can see that's kind of what happens. Even though that's a reasonably good matchup for the heavy range here, the losses are about 50%, and I'm pretty certain that if we'd go with Frog Princess, that could be even worse. Again, that's some of this matchup you can outright lose. And especially if you have less health boost than what I have right now. But hey, we did win, and we did do quite well before that. Okay, so this one, again, we can go heavy melee, or we can go Frog Prince, even though the only one unit here is a specialist against, let's see what he can do, plus 70, minus 50, so damage reduction is not as amazing. And our range should do as good. But you can see this is what happens. That's what I was talking about. So, not sure how the heavy melee could have actually done better in this matchup. So you see later on, and you have a lot of enemy units. Even though 4 light melee is absolutely no problem for Frog Prince, they do amazing. Just a single, even though heavy melee, a unit type which is actually as good against heavy range. And look at what do we have here? 30, 35, at least 1/3 loss, if not more. And that's not unusual. Alright. Okay, well, this one should be good for Frog Princess Thor. Yep, so we did take some damage from the light range, but yeah, that's definitely not quite the same. You see, the only difference with the previous matchup, just a single unit difference. Light range versus heavy melee specialist. Yeah, look at the difference in outcomes. Again, terrain could have been a factor as well, but the swings are pretty dramatic here. Okay. Alright, this one is not heavy range specialist, so we'll go with Frog Princess again. So this time we should be doing better, because these ones are not heavy range specialists. So let's see. You see, again, we did take some losses here, because again, I think the idea is that these heavy melee units, even though they are very slow, they still manage to close the ranks and get close to our Frog Princess and hit them. But because they are not specialists, you see the difference? We only lost about 20, maybe a little bit more percent, compared that to almost twice as much with exactly the same matchup, where the only difference is actually it's even the heavy melee type, just one unit, which is different. Instead of Mutated Orc General, it was Brave Knight. and the damage difference was quite dramatic. Alright, and last but not least, let's hope that's an easy one. Okay, I think that's not a bad one. I think that's another one of the heavy range units. And this one is not heavy range specialist, so we should do alright. So again, here, now I'm gonna go with golems, because now we don't just have light units, and we have light melee units, we have light range, we have heavy range, and we're gonna take some damage from the orc generals. So usually in those kind of situations, the heavy range of choice would be golem. And let's see what we're gonna have here. Yeah, as you can see, quite significant damage, not the worst what we've seen, but that's pretty much what I would expect in this setup, maybe even slightly better. And let's see, I think that would be it. Yep, so all 24 provinces to 5 stars, that's done. As I mentioned, wherever that is a difficult tournament or not so much, really depends a lot, very sensitive on the boosts what you have out there. And as I said, you have more health or more damage for heavy range. Then heavy range as Frog Princess might be much more useful to you versus the case then they don't have enough damage boost from the Ancient Wanderers, and you don't have enough health boost for them, then they could melt very easily very early, and you would be better off to go with other unit types, whatever it's a heavy melee, mages, light range, and so on and so forth. But I will post that information, including more detailed loss data. Link will be in the description. And if you like the content, so hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episodes, because we will be continuing this series for other tournament types. And with that, I'll see you soon. Bye.